Thank you, Mark. I want to thank Colette. This is her third in a series of Jews in honor of the 250th anniversary of our country, and this is Jews in the Gilded Age. I don't know, Colette, how you want to handle if people have questions. Should I just jump in? Do you want to ask the questions or wait at the end? Or
Just go ahead and jump in, and if any opinions or things you want to talk about, just jump in.
okay,
As I said, I'm here for the night for you. So,
okay. This is our last Adult Ed program for this year. So thinking about next year already. So if there's anything that you're interested in learning about or knowing about or teaching about for next year, um, please let me know. I don't know. Mark set this up to record,
Yeah, and I'll post it onto our YouTube site, sometime in the next several days.
and Mark and Colette will be working on the multimedia aspect of this program tonight, which is nice.
Yeah.
So I can't think of anything else at this time.
I was just going to remind people that not pretty easy to remember how to get to our YouTube page. It's youtube.brithachim.org.
Right.
Pretty easy,
There's a lot of stuff out there.
including the previous two Colette presentations in this series. So if you missed one, they're on the YouTube page.
So I'm gonna if there's nothing else, I'm gonna turn it over to Colette at this time. Thank you.
okay, thank you. Welcome, everybody. For those of you who may be new, welcome. And for those who have joined us before, welcome back. I want to thank Rhonda and Mark for inviting me to give this talk, and thank Adult Education as well. And thanks, Mark, for all his technical help. And I know you'll appreciate all the enhancements he's made to the slides you'll see this evening. And all the photos in the presentation, with the exception of one of my own, come from Wikimedia Commons. And I conducted all my research online in many, many different websites. So, as a history buff, I've enjoyed very much putting this together for you, and I've learned a lot, and I hope you'll enjoy it and learn a lot too. Okay. I'll start out with an introduction of the Gilded Age, just to review from things you probably learned about in high school. In 1873, Mark Twain and Charles Dudley Warner published a political satirical novel called The Gilded Age, A Tale of Today, which lent its name to the whole period in U.S. history spanning roughly 1870 to 1900. Twain and Warner derived the name of their novel from a line in Shakespeare's The Life and Death of King John from 1595 that reads, "To gild refined gold, to paint the lily, to throw a perfume on the violet is wasteful and ridiculous excess." These two men used their novel to satirize the greed, the corruption, and the excesses of the rich and powerful in the post Civil War era. It was a time that saw extreme wealth and extreme poverty. Overall, the booming economy may have made this era in US history seem gilded, but there was also a lot of rot underneath. Rapid industrialization, the railroad boom, and the burgeoning financial industry made multimillionaires out of some, including several Jews. The robber barons created monopolies and trusts. Exploitation of the many resulted in unbelievable riches for the few. Rapid industrialization also changed how people made a living in the Gilded Age. Skilled craftsmen and artisans, people who made items from start to finish, were replaced by unskilled machine operators who worked in factories. Mass production became the byword. The working class toiled in factories under grueling, unsanitary, and dangerous conditions for long hours and meager pay. Others worked in crowded tenement shops and overcrowded homes. All these places had poor ventilation and lighting, and it was common for people to work 10 to 14 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week. Even under such deplorable conditions, there was still intense competition for these sweatshop jobs. Jewish and Italian immigrants filled many of those positions. According to History.com, quote, by 1890, the country's 4,000 millionaires held 20% of the country's wealth. And with that enormous affluence came political corruption, end quote. Corporate titans bought favors from politicians, and political machines bought votes from whomever they could. As the Vanderbilts and their contemporaries built their ostentatious so-called summer cottages in Newport, Rhode Island, impoverished working-class immigrants in teeming tenements simply struggled to survive. Between 1870 and 1900, approximately 500,000 to 600,000 Jews arrived in New York City, the majority fleeing persecution in Russia. These Jews were poor and mainly Orthodox. The Lower East Side quickly became overpopulated, and the newcomers were squeezed into overcrowded, poorly maintained living quarters. Many native-born Americans disparaged the immigrants. They feared the newcomers would take their jobs by accepting much lower wages. They also believed that Italian, Jewish, Polish, and Russian immigrants were of, quote, lesser races, end quote. They feared that Jewish and Catholic immigrants would dilute the predominantly Protestant culture in the United States. Additionally, many German Jews who had arrived in the city decades earlier disparaged the newcomers. By the time of the Gilded Age, they had become part and parcel of American society. They were shopkeepers, manufacturers, and bankers. A considerable number had become very wealthy members of the upper class. They looked down on the impoverished newcomers as backward and uncultured, and they worried that the rapid influx of so many poor Jewish immigrants would stoke the flames of anti-Semitism and upset the status quo. Furthermore, the established Jewish community was not principally Orthodox, as were the newcomers. So there was a religious divide. The Reform movement, which had been established in 1824 in Charleston, South Carolina, was the principal denomination to which the German Jews belonged. Hey, Mark, if we could have photo number 1, please. Okay. But to give you a little idea about what some people thought of immigrants during the Gilded Age, I'm showing you the cover of a magazine called Judge. The magazine was known for its political commentary, satire, and humor. The caption of the political cartoon reads, "The proposed immigrant dumping site." Under that, it reads, "Statue of Liberty says to Mr. Wyndham, if you are going to make this island a garbage heap, I'm going back to France." The Mr. Wyndham referred to here was President Benjamin Harrison's Secretary of Treasury. He proposed moving immigrant processing headquarters from Castle Garden in Manhattan to Bedloe's Island, home of the Statue of Liberty. The public outcry against this plan many people believed it would overcrowd and degrade the monument, led to the selection of Ellis Island instead. Note that the ship on the left, can you all see this okay? Can you read the, okay, the ship on the left has European garbage ship written on it, and clearly it is dumping the immigrants onto the island. And the ship on the right flies a flag that also reads European garbage ship. And additionally, the word refuse is written on the side of the ship. Thank you, Mark. If we could have photo number 2, please. Okay, so the topics tonight, I'm going to discuss 6 different individuals that I found to have themes. They represented themes or contributions to the Gilded Age, and I just thought they were really, really interesting individuals, and gives you a little taste of also what things were going on at the time. So we're going to talk about a nurse who helped the New York City poor, a labor advocate who championed the common worker, a media mogul who exposed Gilded Age corruption, a New York City crime boss who was naughty yet nice, a wealthy banker who became a cause celeb, and a wordsmith who supported Jewish causes. Thank you, Mark. We'll have photo number 3, please. Oops, there we go. Okay, Lillian Wald is the first person we'll talk about. She was the nurse. Lillian Wald was born in Cincinnati in 1867 to a well-to-do German Prussian Jewish parents who had emigrated to the US after the 1848 revolutions in Europe. Those uprisings, which occurred in several different European countries, were aimed at bringing down absolute monarchies in favor of nation-states with constitutions. The revolutions failed, absolute monarchies remained in place, and political persecution resulted. Thousands of Europeans, especially Germans, fled to the United States as a result. Lillian's parents came from a family of rabbis and successful merchants. Lillian's father was an optics salesman in Germany, and he continued with that profession after the family's arrival in the US. He prospered here as well. Consequently, Lillian enjoyed a privileged childhood and attended private schools. In 1878, the family moved to Rochester, New York, which Lillian always considered her home. She excelled at school and applied to Vassar College when she was only 16 years old, but the college turned her down because she was too young. Although that rejection must have been very disappointing, she moved on. Her sister had given birth during that time, and Lillian was impressed by the good care a nurse had given her sister. From that point on, nursing seemed like the work she could do to make the world a better place. She enrolled in the New York Hospital Training School for Nurses in 1889 and graduated in 1891. After that, she began studies at New York's Women's Medical College. While in college, she was approached by someone about becoming a volunteer at a small school on Henry Street in the Lower East Side. If she took the position, she would be teaching poor immigrants home nursing skills. Lillian accepted the challenge, and it would change her life and the lives of many, many others for the better. Thank you, Mark. One day at the school, a little girl stormed into her classroom and begged Lillian to come quickly and help her mother. Lillian rushed out with the child, who led her to a 2-room tenement home shared by 7 family members plus a few boarders. The little girl's mother was hemorrhaging badly after giving birth. No doctors could be found to treat the woman because she couldn't afford to pay for their services. Lillian said it was, quote, a shock that was at first numbing, end quote. Then and there, she decided to move to the Lower East Side to live among the poor and get to know them and offer them home nursing services. She strongly believed that everyone deserved equal health care regardless of their financial situation, their age, or their race. People in the community could pay what they could afford, but they would not be turned away if they couldn't afford to pay. So in 1893, an organization known as the Henry Street Settlement was born. Word of Lillian's settlement efforts spread throughout the city. Wealthy New York Jewish banker and philanthropist Jacob Schiff bought building number 265 on Henry Street for Lillian's use because he also felt very strongly about health care for the poor. Also in 1893, Lillian coined the term public health nurse and founded the New York Visiting Nurse Service, which is still in operation today with over 1,200 nurses participating. The Henry Street Settlement is also still in operation today. In addition to healthcare services, its 18 locations offer social services, preschooling and youth activities, job training, transitional housing for the homeless, and arts education and performances. Considering Lillian Wald's lasting contributions to society in the spirit of Tikkun Olam, perhaps it's a blessing that Vassar College rejected her application when she was 16. Thank you, Mark. Any questions or comments so far?
It's a beautiful, inspiring story. Very, very special woman.
Yes, I thought so too. Okay, Mark, photo number 4. Samuel Gompers. He was the labor advocate we saw on the topics sheet. Samuel Gompers was born in 1850 in London to Dutch Jewish immigrants. The family was impoverished and lived in the notorious West End slum called Spitalfields. His father made a meager living by making cigars at home. To help support the family at 10 years old, Samuel left the Jewish free school he was attending to work with his father rolling cigars. In 1863, when Samuel was 13, the family emigrated to New York City, hoping to create a better life there. They moved into a tenement on the Lower East Side where Samuel and his father continued rolling cigars for a living. 1 year later, Samuel joined his local United Cigar Makers Union and began working at a small cigar making shop where he was paid by the piece. His own experience with deplorable working conditions would inform his philosophy and his life's work. Among the friends he made were socialists who had conversations with him about the importance of unions and social reforms. In 1875, Samuel was chosen as president of his local chapter, and some years later, he was elected national vice president of the United Cigar Makers Union. His insistence on high union dues resulted in union benefits for workers, including sick pay, pay when they were out of work, and death benefits for their families when they died. Despite the fact that Gompers had worked side by side with socialists, he did not favor socialism or communism over capitalism. His philosophy has been called, quote, bread and butter unionism, or, quote, pure and simple unionism, end quote. He believed in working within the capitalist system for better wages, safer working conditions, fewer working hours, and better benefits. much could be accomplished through collective bargaining. Thank you, Mark. However, despite being pro-capitalism, he had no reverence for the robber barons who acquired their massive fortunes by exploiting their workers and often viciously crushing labor unions. He believed labor power through unionization would serve as a counterbalance to their greed. Gompers soon gained national renown, and he involved himself more deeply with unionism. In 1881, he helped found the Federation of Organized Trades and Labor Unions, FOTLU, and he was elected its vice president. Then in 1886, the Federation of Organized Trades and Labor Unions, FOTLU, was reorganized as the American Federation of Labor, AFL, and Gompers was elected its president. He remained the president for 40 years. Under his leadership, the AFL grew to be the world's largest labor federation. However, Gompers didn't champion all laborers. When Russian and other Eastern European Jews began emigrating to the US in great numbers, he worked to limit immigration. He believed that immigrants would ultimately lower the standard of living for American workers. Gompers also held white supremacist views. To him, Black and Chinese workers represented a threat to white workers. He was an avid supporter of the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, which restricted immigration of Chinese laborers for 10 years and denied them citizenship. Over the course of his tenure as president of the AFL, Gompers strategically changed his attitude about inclusion of Black workers in unions. Initially, the AFL pledged that Blacks were welcome to join, but the times dictated otherwise. In addition to prevalent racial animus in the North and Jim Crow life in the South, white workers feared that Blacks would accept lower wages and potentially be used by employers as strike breakers. Desiring to keep the AFL unified and strong, he permitted unions to segregate themselves. Despite these shortcomings, Samuel Gompers' dedication to improving the lives of workers ultimately benefited millions of people. Strong unions, 8-hour workdays, the elimination of sweatshops, collective bargaining, and generous benefits still help millions today and are part of his legacy. Questions or comments?
I have one.
Yes.
For those of you who are not native Philadelphians, you may not be aware that an elementary school in Winfield bears his name.
Really?
Mhm.
Oh, interesting. Mark, if we could have photo number 5, please. Joseph Pulitzer. Joseph Pulitzer was born in Hungary in 1847 to a merchant family wealthy enough to be able to enroll him in a private school. It was there that he learned German and French, which would serve him very well in the future. In his late teens, he was determined to enlist in the armed forces somewhere, anywhere. He approached and was turned down by the Austrians, the French, the British, because of his poor eyesight. Eventually, in 1864, an American bounty recruiter who was in Europe searching for enlistees for the Union Army accepted him. This was despite the fact that Pulitzer knew precious little English and had poor vision. So he was off to New York to join the New York Lincoln Cavalry. He served in that unit until the end of the Civil War in 1865. After the war, unable to find a job in New York City, he moved to St. Louis to try his luck there. St. Louis at that time had a huge German-speaking population, definitely the major ethnic group in the city. Thanks to Joseph's facility with German, he landed a job as a journalist at a German language newspaper there called the Westlicher Post. Through dedication, hard work, a fine reputation, and fortuitous deals, he eventually became the owner of another local newspaper called the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. He championed populist ideas and featured articles about political corruption and monopolies. The paper's readership increased. Thank you, Mark. Sadly, the long hours that he worked at the newspaper took a toll on his health. He declined to the point where his physician insisted that he and his wife take a European vacation to rest. He agreed to do that. In 1883, they traveled to New York City to board a ship bound for the continent. But when Pulitzer arrived in New York City, he abruptly changed his mind and refused to go. Instead, he met with the notorious robber baron, financier, and railroad tycoon Jay Gould and negotiated a deal to buy the failing New York World newspaper from him. Shortly thereafter, Pulitzer initiated a style of reporting which became known as yellow journalism. Along with solid investigative reporting, he mixed sensationalist stories and headlines, and even some fake news to attract more readers. He always retained his interest in common working people and wanted his newspaper to appeal to them, not the elites. The New York World regularly featured articles about the struggles of immigrant life in the tenements, political corruption, and the evils of the Gilded Age robber barons. In 1885, Pulitzer launched a major newspaper campaign to solicit funding for a pedestal for the Statue of Liberty. He asked his readers to contribute to the cause, and they responded enthusiastically. In 6 months' time, he raised over $400,000 from about 120,000 contributors. This was enough for the pedestal to be completed. The Statue of Liberty was dedicated in 1886. We have photo number 6, please, Mark. The newspaper's readership kept increasing, and by 1890, Pulitzer had enough resources to construct the New York World Building, the largest, the newspaper's headquarters. It was the tallest building in the world at that time. It was actually demolished between 1955 and 56 for construction of ramps to the Brooklyn Bridge. Pulitzer's New York World and William Randolph Hearst's New York Journal competed furiously for readership in the 1890s. They both increased the use of sensational stories and headlines, forever linking yellow journalism with the Gilded Age. That a non-English speaking immigrant from Hungary rose to become the owner of one of the world's most successful English newspapers was in itself, I think, pretty sensational. Thank you, Mark. Questions or comments?
I have a question. I have a question. So
Yes.
I'm assuming this is the Pulitzer from the Pulitzer Prize.
Yes,
So was it named in his honor, or did he leave money to give these awards out every year?
that's a good question, and unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that. I'm sorry, Rhonda.
Okay, that's all right. I mean, 'cause that's pretty prestigious, and to this day.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, photo number 7, please.
Take me a second.
Frederica Mandelbaum. Frederica Mandelbaum was born in Prussia in 1825. She and her husband Wolf were peasants who made a living as itinerant peddlers. They emigrated to New York City practically penniless in 1850 and settled in a poor, cramped area of New York's Lower East Side called Kleindeutschland, or Little Germany, where many other German immigrants lived. She and Wolf eventually had 4 children together. Initially, the Mandelbaums made a living by paying local people to scavenge a little bit of money for goods they found around the town and then reselling them for a substantial profit. Frederica also sold pieces of lace door to door during this time. Eventually, the couple made enough money to lease a dry goods store at the corner of Clinton and Rivington Streets in the Lower East Side and live in the apartment above the store. The store quickly became a front for their blossoming fencing business. As the business grew, Wolf appears to have faded into the background and Frederica took charge. Word spread, and soon thieves, shoplifters, and burglars were working with Frederica, bringing expensive items such as silk, silverware, gold jewelry, cashmere shawls, even horses and carriages for her to resell. Word spread, and soon thieves, in time, she even became involved in financing and helping to organize bank robberies in the city, netting thousands of dollars in cash, securities, and jewelry. She was known for taking very good care of the thieves who worked for her. Frederica befriended them and gave them advice and training in the criminal arts. If her underlings were jailed, she bailed them out. Because she took such good care of them, they began calling her Mother or Marm. Frederica's associates were forbidden to use violence when procuring their goods. She insisted that neither they nor their victims were to be harmed physically. By the 1870s, she had reached her zenith. Now a multimillionaire who had grown her business into an empire worth $10 million, which would be about 300 million in today's money, by the way. She dressed in the finest clothes and bedecked herself with feathers and jewels. Silk, diamonds, and other luxury goods became her products of choice. New York's high society had gotten wind of her empire and knew very well how she operated it. Nevertheless, they realized they could buy fence luxury items from her rather than from legitimate businesses, perhaps at much better prices. Her uptown customers didn't really care how she had sourced the items. We have photo number 8, please, Mark. Frederica hosted elaborate dinner parties attended by the rich and famous at her lavishly decorated apartment located above her store. And you can see her sitting on the very far right there with a fan. Members of high society, judges, politicians, and select policemen attended these affairs. For 25 to 30 years, she was called the Queen of Fence, the most successful in New York City. But her luck eventually ran out. In 1884, the Pinkertons, a private eye firm during that period, initiated a sting operation that caught her receiving stolen property. She was arrested and then released on bond. But she was not about to stick around for a trial and probable jail time. She fled to Ontario, Canada, where she lived until she died in 1884. Thank you, Mark. Comments, questions?
So I did look up about the Pulitzer Prize.
Okay,
It
thank you, Mark.
was Pulitzer left it in his will, and it was administered by Columbia University. At
Oh, right,
least
wonderful.
that's the Wikipedia entry on it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mark, for doing that.
Mhm.
Any other questions, comments about Frederica?
Amazing character.
I understand there's a book out about her life, and it might be well worth the read. We could have photo number 9, please. Joseph Seligman was born in Bavaria, Germany, and emigrated to the US before the Civil War when he was 18 years old. His first job was in a shop right here in Jim Thorpe, PA, and then he worked after that as a traveling peddler in rural Pennsylvania. In 1846, he and his brother James started an importing and dry goods store they called J&W Seligman Company. After the Civil War, the Seligmans transitioned to investment banking on Wall Street. The firm also invested heavily in railroads. As a result, Seligman became extremely wealthy and was catapulted into New York high society. In 1877, he and his family traveled to Saratoga Springs, New York, an elite Gilded Age resort, intending to register at the upscale Grand Union Hotel, where they had vacationed many times before. If we could have photo 10, please, Mark. That particular year, the hotel was being managed by an anti-Semitic judge, businessman, and associate of the corrupt Tammany Hall named Henry Hilton. He is no relation to Conrad Hilton of the Hilton Hotels fame, by the way. A.T. Stewart, the owner of the department store by the same name, had chosen Judge Hilton as his executive. When Stewart died, the judge managed the department store as well as Stewart's Grand Union Hotel. According to a New York Times article at the time, Seligman was told by the front desk clerk that, and I quote, Mr. Hilton has given instructions that no Israelite shall be permitted in the future to stop at this hotel, end quote. The excuse was that business at the hotel was down because, quote, the Gentile guests didn't want to share space with the Israelites, end quote. So suddenly, in 1877, the Seligman family couldn't register at the Grand Union anymore. In the event, this episode was publicized and it created a national uproar. Joseph Seligman was, after all, a well-known, highly respected businessman who had helped the Union Army during the Civil War by selling millions of dollars of war bonds. The Seligman affair, as it came to be known, was one of the first widely publicized anti-Semitic incidents in the United States. It prompted criticism from both the Jewish and the Christian communities. Thereafter, some people even boycotted the A.T. Stewart department store and the Grand Union Hotel. Unfortunately, despite public outcry after the affair emboldened other hoteliers and resort owners to apply the same discriminatory rules to their businesses as the Grand Union Hotel did to theirs. In the future, Jews would see signs posted at certain hotels and resorts which read things such as, quote, Gentiles only, Hebrews need not apply, and no Jews or dogs allowed. If we could have photo number 11, please. This is a political cartoon from the cover of Judge magazine in 1892, and it was drawn by an artist named Grant E. Hamilton. Its purpose was to depict that Jewish people emigrating to New York City were coming rather than going to Jerusalem and becoming prosperous. Meanwhile, the so-called first families of New York, that is the Dutch, were moving to the West to find new opportunities. So note that the names on the buildings, if you can any of you see those names on the buildings at all? It's a little hard to see. But the names on the buildings include on the left there, right above the little sunrise on the left, says Moses Lazarus. And that's actually Emma's father. He was a merchant, as we talked about earlier. There's Seligman's name is on one of those buildings. And the Pulitzer building is way, way in the background. You can see it on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side of this cartoon, it shows someone in Russia who is beating a whip around, and the Jews are coming here to New York. And on the left-hand side, we can see a sign that says "To the West," and the so-called first families are leaving, going into brighter days, I suppose, they think. The sign on the bottom of the right-hand part of the cartoon says, New Jerusalem. Any comments about this political cartoon?
Who's
It's
the,
interesting. Go
oh,
ahead.
I'm sorry, who's the figure in the middle supposed to represent?
The person in the middle
Uh-huh.
is just supposed to be a Jewish businessman.
It says something about industry.
I think it's perseverance and industry.
Yeah, yeah, it's a businessman. So
I just thought it was so interesting how coming from Russia, they look like poor immigrants, peasants. And as they're going to the West, they have top hats, they're all dressed. I'm sure that's exactly how they traveled to the West.
well,
And of course, seemed wealthy.
yeah, those going on the left-hand side with the top hats, those are the first family Dutch and so forth who are leaving New York to go to brighter horizons.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what's happening there. They are leaving the city, and
Okay.
the peasants are coming in.
Okay. I had the peasants coming in and then heading out and dispersing all over out west, having become wealthy. So I misunderstood it.
Right. I just thought the anti-Semitism here was just something I wanted to bring out as we were talking about Seligman and what he had been through. And I just thought this sort of related a little bit. Any other comments?
Yeah, I think the anti-Semitism is flagrant because you pointed out those heading to the West do look wealthy with the top hats. So if they're wealthy, why are they leaving New York? Well, it's because they're anti-Semites. They don't want to share the city with anyone. So, yeah, it's a
Well, and also the buildings, if you can read, the names are Lazarus, Cohen, Seligman there on the left-hand side, the third building from the right.
right.
Then the Pulitzer building, and then we have Levy over here and Cohen over here and Steinberg. And so, yeah.
So is there a statement that the Jewish firms were taking over?
That's, I guess that was something that the political cartoon was trying to get across at that point. And the whole item there is that the New York is crossed out on the bottom right-hand side, and New York is crossed out and it says New Jerusalem. So instead of going to Jerusalem, they're coming here, and this is going to be their New Jerusalem. The Judge magazine
Could I?
has, yes, yes.
So I didn't remember. Is this the last one, or is there another one after this?
Cartoon?
Yeah. People.
No, there's one more.
Okay, I'll wait till after that then.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Judge magazine was apparently a weekly magazine of with political cartoons and commentary and supposed humor. So, all right. Well, we'll have photo number 12, please. And Emma Lazarus. Emma Lazarus was born in New York City in 1849 to a wealthy family of merchants. Her Lazarus Portuguese Sephardic ancestors were among the 23 families who fled to Newport, Rhode Island in the 17th century from what was then called Dutch Brazil after the Spanish conquered the country. So her roots in this country ran very deep. And those of you who had joined us for the colonial Jews in the colonial times, I think this might sound a little bit familiar. Writing came rather naturally to her. In 1867, when she was in her teens, her father published a book of her work that she called Poems and Translations. It was comprised of some of her own poetry, as well as translations of several famous German poems. We got 13, photo 13, please, Mark. When she was 18 years old, she visited Touro Synagogue in Newport, Rhode Island, which is the oldest in the United States, founded by those Portuguese Jews who had fled Dutch Brazil. Emma's ancestor, Moses Seixas, was a prominent member of this synagogue. A known patriot during the Revolutionary War, he is best remembered for the congratulatory letter he sent George Washington in 1790 after Washington was elected president. In the letter written on behalf of the congregation, he sought assurance from Washington that religious freedom would be respected in the new republic. Emma's trip to Newport possibly set her thinking more deeply about her Jewish heritage. In 1868, soon after this visit, Emma wrote a poem about Touro Synagogue called In the Jewish Synagogue in Newport. Thank you, Mark. Emma's trip to Newport in 1881, when Emma was in her early 30s, Russian Tsar Alexander II was assassinated. Waves of pogroms followed because the Jews were blamed for the Tsar's death. Consequently, thousands of Russian Jews fled to New York City. Emma volunteered as an aide at local agencies established to assist the new immigrants. She taught English classes for immigrants and helped found the Hebrew Technical Institute in New York, which provided vocational training for them. Emma's compassion for the persecuted Jews and their plight was reflected in several of her works. Ironically, the sonnet she wrote, entitled The New Colossus, her most famous work, was not something she was initially interested in writing. The head of a committee for funding a pedestal for the Statue of Liberty approached Emma about writing a poem as a fundraiser. She was against writing on demand for individuals or for commissions, so she was disinclined to cooperate. But a friend convinced her to look at the proposal in another light. Wouldn't the Jewish immigrants sailing into New York Harbor see the statue as something comforting, sort of like a mother of exiles. We could have photo 14, Mark, please. Emma changed her mind and in 1883 wrote the sonnet in 3 days. As we all know, it was then inscribed on a plaque on the statue's pedestal. I believe it's worth taking the time to read the 14 beautiful lines of the new Colossus in full to close this evening's presentation. Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land, here at our sea-washed sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame. Keep, ancient lands, your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, the tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. And this photo here shows, it's a Curry and Ives print entitled The Great Bartholdi Statue of Liberty Enlightening the World. Thank you, Mark.
That was amazing. Thank you, Colette.
Oh, you're welcome. Very welcome. Hope you enjoyed it.
I
So,
never heard the whole poem. That was very powerful.
Oh,
Very powerful.
Again, your level of research and your picking and choosing has just been commendable. Thank you so very much.
you're quite welcome, all of you. I love doing this. So I'm just a history buff, and this is just right up my alley. So, as I said, I learned a lot doing this.
so I was going to say before, I imagine there's a few of us who watched the TV show, The Gilded Age, and this is such the flip side of what was going on at that time, because that focuses on the well, I don't think they call them the Vanderbilts, but the really wealthy people. So this is interesting to see about the people, particularly the Jewish people, who help those who are at the bottom of the ladder. So it's
Right.
and which you did mention that it was the haves and the have-nots, and so really interesting to know that there were people who were concerned about it. And then you mentioned that one woman, that the woman who had the big hair and the big name.
Yeah, Frederica.
Yeah,
Frederica
yeah,
Mandelbaum. Yeah,
yeah. So she was apparently a very wealthy woman herself.
she became extremely wealthy. As I said, what about $300 million in today's money?
Yeah,
Starting and just selling scrap, really.
yeah. But she still was watching out for the people at the who on the lower end of things, which was interesting. You didn't, at least I don't
Right.
recall watching the TV show, that there were too many of the people who at the top level who really cared at all about how the lower end was doing. So
Absolutely. Just like I had said a little earlier, there were the robber barons and the factories were with deplorable conditions to work in. You know? And Samuel Gompers got a taste of what it was like himself, and therefore felt like he wanted to do something to make lives better, and he did. And generally, I feel like most of these people did something to make people's lives better.
And Frederica was almost like a Robin Hood. She
She
could have been a folk hero.
she was. Yes, she was.
But it's so interesting just to look at the parallels to our time too, in
Absolutely.
terms of the wealthy and the corruption, the immigrants who were resented for whatever, whether it was the anti-Semitism or just that they would take their jobs and poo, they were lower class.
Right.
And yet it was the people who worked for the underdog, the people who stood up and wouldn't tolerate the corrupt system as it had developed.
Right. Exactly.
But I see real parallels to today.
I did too, as I was working on this. Really did. Bill.
Okay, it was a very good presentation. As usual, you did so much good research. One thing I was going to say, okay, some people, the period that you didn't mention, how many, well, you mentioned Seligman, but
Mhm.
business people, no, the story goes, oh, they started like as a peddler, and how much important like department stores were built. I think with both Macy's and Gimbel's and Le Levi Strauss, and there was others. Yeah, yeah. How much consumer culture they wound up building.
Yes, actually, absolutely.
Do you have any wrap up things to say?
Does anybody else have anything they wanted to ask about or comments for future things? I know Faye sent me an email with some ideas. And so, like I said, if you have some ideas about things you'd like to learn about, please let me know. Um, Colette, was there anything else that you wanted
No,
to add?
I think that's what I
Yeah,
had for.
I just wanted to thank you for a really great presentation.
No, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yasherkoa.
Thank you.
Yashikoa. Thank you again.
Okay, you're welcome. My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Mark.